Welcome to Inside the Lines, presented by BetMGM. Joined by Nik Bonaddio and Rachel Doerrie, I'm Olivia Harlan Dekker. Let's start with the NFC Offensive Player of the Week, Christian McCaffrey, who has caused significant shifts in the futures market. Look, after torching the Cardinals for 106 rushing yards, 7 receptions, 71 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns, his odds have taken a massive jump forward. He's now the favorite to win Offensive Player of the Year at plus 210, jumping up 56% from the previous week. And an even bigger move for his MVP odds, if we look at that, moving 72% from 50-1 last week to 14-1 this week. Nik, do you see any value left in betting either one of these futures for McCaffrey?
It's tough because, look, a running back hasn't won the award since 2012, at least on the MVP side. You can't really do too much math here because you can't model the behavior of what voters will find important or compelling. 2012 in particular was a weird year. The QBs threw a bunch of picks. AP had more rushing yards than anyone since Eric Dickerson. So that was a little bit of an odd year. I think if you are going to bet CMC, you're really betting on his health, which has historically been a little bit dicey. I think ultimately the argument becomes, if you're a voter for this, who makes their team better, CMC or Elijah Mitchell versus Tua or Mike White or Josh Allen versus Kyle Allen. I think if you look at it from a replacement player perspective, it's really hard to vote a running back over a quarterback. And I think that, just on the basis of that, I think you have to shy away here.
Rachel, do you agree, or where do you stand on McCaffrey futures?
I am fully agree with Nik. I look at this and I say we're too early in the season, especially with McCaffrey's health. That hasn't been something that you can rely upon. And with the fact that if you look at replacement value, like Nik pointed out, the drop off between McCaffrey to Mitchell is significantly less than the drop off between Tua and his backup and Josh Allen and his backup. And so I think when you look at that and the replacement value of what the individual player and the value they bring to their respective teams looks at, I think you have to shy away from McCaffrey for MVP. I could see him for Offensive Player of the Year, but then again, you're betting on his health, and that's not something I think I would do at this stage.
Okay, you're both saying stay away, but he sure is fun to watch as he stays healthy now. Let's stick with futures, but move to the AFC South, where all 4 teams in the division are 2-2. It's getting crowded there. Early struggles from Jacksonville have this race tighter than expected. The Jaguars are still the favorite at plus 150. They face the Bills Sunday for their second London game. The Titans easily took care of the Bengals last week, improving their odds by 25% to win the division. Houston and CJ Stroud continue to impress, handling the Steelers with ease in week 4. Their odds jumped from plus 850 to plus 475. That's almost a 45% move. And the Colts were the only team to lose in week 4 and had their odds drop from 45% from plus 275 to plus 500. Rachel, which of these 2-2 teams would you bet on to take the division crown?
I think if you're looking at most likely to happen, you have to go with the Jaguars. They have the best quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. They've got a good running back in Travis Etienne. There's a great receiving core with Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. I really like what they have there. However, they do have to play Buffalo this weekend, and they still have to play San Francisco. So they have a bit of a tougher schedule than the other team I like on a value play. I think Jacksonville is more likely to come out on top of the AFC South, but I like the Texans' value, even though it's dropped 45% in the last week. If you look at CJ Stroud, he's looked absolutely fantastic, and they have the easiest strength of schedule left in their division. They don't have to play the same level of team that a team like Jacksonville has to play. And if CJ Stroud can continue to build on what he's had the last 3 weeks, I think Houston is kind of a dark horse for this division title.
I can't believe we're talking about the Texans in this spot. This is so exciting. Everyone's talking about CJ Stroud. Nik, which AFC South team are you backing?
In another segment, we're going back to back. I agree with Rachel. I think the best team here is the Jaguars, but at plus 150, there isn't a lot of value in betting that. All of these teams from a possibility perspective are about 25 to 30%. So from purely imputed value perspective, the Texans and the Colts here are the best bet. There really isn't that much difference between these two. So getting a little more juice on the Texans or the Colts is the better bet. But I do think the Jaguars are their best team.
Okay, some rookie quarterbacks getting some love there. Let's stick with the AFC conversation, but focus in on week 5 and who the public is betting on. So I mentioned the Jaguars. They're gearing up for their second straight London game after beating the Falcons last week. The Bills opened as a 4.5-point favorite over Jacksonville and have been bet up to 5.5. The public is all over Buffalo after they easily defeated the Dolphins, with 89% of the early bets on the Bills to cover the 5.5-point spread. Nik, do you think there's an advantage for the Jaguars having, already been in London, they're on the time zone, and would you fade the public here?
Normally I love fading the public. I think typically that's a strategy that I like to get behind. To me, this is a little bit of a no bet. Jacksonville is just too inconsistent for us to really get a good understanding or a good sense of, how they're going to play. Buffalo, we have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do. We know how they're going to run the ball, they're going to pass the ball, they're going to play strong defense. I think with Jacksonville, the range of how they could perform is so wide that I wouldn't feel comfortable in this situation. I think for me, it's clearly a no bet.
Rachel, are you siding with the public on this one?
I think I'm going to actually have to join Nik again and go with no bet. And you mentioned when you were breaking this down that one is time adjusted and the other is not. And the science behind that is pretty significant. When you are playing a team, and the Falcons are kind of in the same situation coming back, when you're playing a team that is time adjusted for 6 or 7 hours versus a team that isn't, there is an inherent competitive advantage there. However, Jacksonville is inconsistent. Trevor Lawrence has been inconsistent. And so I think when you look at it, you know what you're getting with the Bills. The problem is you don't know how the time zone change and the impact of the travel is going to impact their play. And so I always like to say it's a no bet for me on these international games because you just never know how the travel is going to affect them, especially in this situation where you've got one team that's already sitting there waiting.
To be fair, it's at a different stadium. I'm going to this one. It's at Tottenham Hotspur. Last week they were at Wembley. So different stadium, totally different game.
Big difference.
Let's check out another
Tottenham
spread.
Stadium.
Yeah, big difference. I do too. It is nice. It feels like the future. Let's check out another spread that the public loves. This is a fun one. I'm all over this one. The Giants were embarrassed at home in primetime for the second straight week, and the public took notice. After opening at 9.5, the spread has jumped 2 points to 11.5 in favor of the Dolphins, with 90% of early bets on the Dolphins to cover. Rachel, do you think this is a bit of an overreaction to the Giants' awful Monday night performance, and would you fade the public here?
Okay, so I've got to say this. I am not high on the Giants at all. I genuinely think that they probably need to be flexed out of primetime games right now because we've been given a couple of just awful games by them. Miami's looking to rebound, and the Giants cannot defend, and they're playing the league's best offense, who did sort of struggle last week. I would consider the plus 11.5 if Saquon Barkley is playing. If he is not playing, I'm going to have to go with the Dolphins because I think Barkley at least gives them another dimension to their offense. So it's not just Daniel Jones running around trying not to get sacked. But if you look at it, until the Giants show me they can defend, I have zero confidence that they're going to be able to defend Tua and Achane and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek.
Nik, do you think the public's right on this side?
No, I think the public's wrong. I think this looks and smells a lot to me like the Jets-Chiefs matchup last week, where you kind of have to hold your nose and take the points. I think this line opened pretty close to where it should have been, like 9.5. I think at 11.5, you're looking at backdoor covers. You're looking at, can the Giants slow this game down? Especially if Saquon plays, they'll be able to run the ball 150 yards a game against the Dolphins in the rushing game. The Dolphins don't really pressure the quarterback all that much. They got the second lowest pressure rate. I think, not saying the Giants are going to win this game. That's definitely not what I'm saying. The Giants aren't a good team. 11.5 just seems like a big number. There's a lot of scenarios I could see here where the game gets slowed down, backdoor covers. I think 11.5 is just too big of a number.
The Giants have not covered yet this season. So let's take a look at that trend because there are a bunch of teams who haven't. Let's look into this week 5 discussion, focusing on this trend, including this game. Each of these teams you see here are playing on Sunday and have yet to cover the spread this season. Bengals, Broncos, Saints, and Panthers all came close, but pushed, while the Giants are in danger of starting 0-5 against the spread. Since we just discussed this game in Miami, Nik, which team other than the Giants do you think can get their first cover this weekend?
I really like the Saints this week. I liked them a lot more when it was +1 versus -1, but I think the Saints here are in a really good position. Patriots are really struggling. Mac Jones got benched. Even with Tyquan Thornton back, they really have no receivers that scare you or even perform above replacement level. Their weather reports make this game kind of windy, kind of rainy, which definitely advantages the better running team, which is New Orleans with Alvin Kamara, especially because New England's kind of built to stop the pass without Matt Judon, without Christian Gonzalez. New Orleans is going to be able to run the ball, control this game a little bit. I think this is a great spot for the Saints to get right.
Rachel, are any of these teams covering on Sunday, in your opinion?
I don't think any of them are. Like I said, though, with the Giants, if Barkley plays, there is a chance of a backdoor cover there. But other than that, I just don't see a scenario. Joe Burrow is getting run all the way around the field because his offensive line doesn't exist. The Broncos shouldn't be favored against anybody. And you look at it, the Saints are probably the most likely to do it. Maybe the Panthers, but you never know what you're going to get with Bryce Young. So for me, I don't think any of them I'm confident in to actually buck this trend. They all seem to kind of be where they belong.
Okay, I've got another good trend for you. This one is focused on an individual, a coach. So 61% of early bets are on the Ravens to cover the spread in Pittsburgh. However, this is where the trend comes in. Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin is elite against the spread as a home underdog, covering 77% of the time. That's 17, 5, and 3. Rachel, are you willing to jump on this trend and back Tomlin and the Steelers?
I am not. I cannot back somebody who allows that offense to continue to be called in the fashion that it has been called when they just cannot put up points. You don't know what the deal is with Kenny Pickett. And I think at this point, you really can't place a bet until you know if the starting quarterback is going to play. So you need to figure out if Pickett's playing. And even if he is, they haven't been able to move that offense down the field. And I have some serious concerns about it. Now, Lamar Jackson has struggled against the Steelers when you compare him to other teams in his division, but the Steelers are allowing a ton of rushing yards. Baltimore is having success rushing the ball, and we all know Lamar Jackson can rush the ball with great effectiveness. So I just have serious concerns about Pittsburgh's ability to score any points to keep up with Baltimore.
Nick, do you agree? Where do you stand on this Tomlin trend?
This is tough because, people who know me know I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh. And so, everyone in my family went to Pitt. So Pickett and the Steelers, it's really hard for me to be impartial here. I think until we have more information about Pickett's status, it's really difficult to take a side here. I think Rachel's points are correct. They're sitting their best running back in Jalen Warren. They're running, just awful play calls. I think Matt Canada is the worst OC in the league. But you just can't take a side here until you know about Pickett. For as shaky as Pickett has been, he's a lot better than Mitch Trubisky. And, that's easily worth 2 points, 3 points. And that's just too much margin when you've got a game where the line is 4 and the over-under is 38. And so I think you have to sit this one out for now.
Okay, Mr. Pittsburgh. That took a lot, I know, to get out of you. So it's time for primetime props. We're going to share our favorite prop in one of the primetime games. You get a pick. Nick, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I like it. We talked about CMC earlier, Christian McCaffrey, so obviously the most talented running back in this league, so efficient. Line is just doing a great job. The line here in this game is about 73.5. We projected closer to 86, 87. Look, San Francisco is not the Patriots. Arizona put 222 yards on them the week before. We're talking about CMC here, the best running back in the league. Huge O-line advantage. O-line, we have San Francisco at number 3 versus a number 13, number 14 D-line in the Cowboys. This is a great position for CMC. If this game gets out of hand, then I'd be a little bit worried, but I do think the Cowboys will make this competitive, and we like the over here at 73.5.
I love that. His worst game, he had 85 rushing yards. So I think that number seems low. Rachel, which primetime prop is catching your eye?
I've got a couple, and they are both CMC related. He is somebody where you look at the numbers and they all go over, like Nick was kind of laying out. Then you look at the trends, and until the trend of Christian McCaffrey scoring a touchdown is sort of bucked, you got to take that. You also have to take his rushing yards. Like the lowest he's had this year is 85. He's gone over 100 in the other 3 games. And Dallas does have a great defense, but Christian McCaffrey's been absolutely dominant to start the year. He's going to have that offensive line like Nick laid out. And I have him projected for almost 83 rushing yards. So I think he comfortably gets over this. I would have some concerns if they're blowing them out and maybe he isn't getting the touches. Maybe they go to Elijah Mitchell. But I think at the end of the day, I like McCaffrey's rushing yards. And I also like McCaffrey to score a touchdown. He is a touchdown scoring machine. He had 4 last week. And even though Dallas's defense is great, you have to look at this and go, nobody has been able to stop Christian McCaffrey. So why would we believe anyone can stop him until they show us they can?
Okay, I like it. That's going to be a good game. Are you sniffing a blowout like you mentioned?
I don't think I'm going to sniff a blowout, but I do think that we're looking at maybe a multi-possession game, maybe like 8-9 points.
Oh, man. Okay. That's going to be a good one. Before we wrap up the episode, we're giving you our blue chip bets, aka our best bets. Anything we love. It can be spread, money line, total, prop, whatever we want. Nick, what is your blue chip bet?
Yeah, normally I like to go a little bit crazy with my blue chip bets, but I'm going to keep it nice and normal here. Juju Smith-Schuster under 25 or 29.5 receiving yards. We have him projected around 23 to 24. I mean, look, going back to the well with Steelers content, Antonio Brown, Chase Claypool, Juju. If the Steelers are giving up a wide receiver, there is a reason why. And Juju's snap counts are down. His targets are down. Mac Jones looks like he belongs in the Mac conference with how well he's played. Based on his ADOT, he needs about 5 to 6 targets to get to this number, which he hasn't done all season. And now you're asking me to trust the number 3 option in a dysfunctional offense to put up 30 receiving yards against a pretty good defense. I'm not buying it. So I'm fading Juju in this spot.
Mac Jones looks like he should be in the Mac conference. That's pretty good. Did you come up with that yourself?
Yeah, that was last night. That was in the workshop
That's pretty good.
Like a couple minutes. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
I love it. Rachel, what's your blue chip bet for the people?
All right, I'm going overseas with this one. I'm going Josh Allen over 1.5 passing touchdowns versus Jacksonville. The guy is on fire. He had 4 TDs last week against Miami. Jacksonville can defend the run. They're pretty good at defending the run, but they are struggling to defend the pass. They're allowing the most receiving yards per game to wide receiver ones. This year, they're allowing 1.5 passing touchdowns per game, and they got absolutely picked apart by Houston, and they've given up 2 TDs to KC and to Houston. And so I think if you look at this, Josh Allen is going to have Stephon Diggs. He's got Gabe Davis. There's Dawson Knox. There's Dalton Kincaid. There are so many options that I just think you look at this. Jacksonville hasn't been able to defend the pass. Why would Josh Allen go away from that when he's got so many fantastic options? I really like that spot there.
Okay, Nick, Rachel, thanks so much for your insight every week. And thank you for watching Inside the Lines. We'll be back every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week.